if a woman is seen as drinking and then therefore she's wild and therefore she's asking for it, and that's actually a massive myth in Singapore's culture. For one of the incidents of sexual violence that I survived, a fellow uni student, she drugged my drink during orientation. Her friend followed me back after my drink got drugged, and then he raped me in my dorm room. There was so much blood all over my bed sheets, but I went into such a terrible state of shock by that point, because by then I had survived quite a lot of acts of sexual violence already. I think there was just this part of me that just couldn't believe it was happening again.
I was 17 when I was raped by my ex-partner. It happened at his place, in his room. And how it happened was we were having a fight. I went over. We were supposed to talk about it, but no talking happened. All my rejections and everything that I was doing was not getting through to him at all. So after the resisting, after trying to fight, it was a lot of crying, a lot of shouting, I guess. I could not cope. I was very tired with fighting and feeling like I was losing the battle, honestly. I basically waited for it to end and then I left.
The fact that the act started because of the aggressor who decided to do something to hurt the victim. That should be what we're talking about.
Sexual violence, I feel like, covers many things, so it's a whole spectrum. And I think some people they like to compare. They're like, oh, you got molested, you didn't get raped. But people don't realize that every experience of sexual violence is traumatic.
How did your body respond as you were assaulted? Of course, my body was in shock when certain uncomfortable things happened, like when he was trying to forcefully digitally penetrate me and stuff. Like, I could feel that my body was rejecting it, but at the same time it was very confusing, even though I didn't understand what was happening to me and I didn't even know that what he was doing to me was wrong. But he opened up my eyes to pleasures on my body way earlier than I should have been aware of them. So this is something that was very upsetting for me, and I think I struggled a lot when I was growing up.
I was like, why am I still wet, for example? I don't want this to happen, so why is my body reacting as if I want this to happen to me? But that's a misconception where it's just it's a very biological reaction where your body is just something's penetrating you, you need lubrication. It's a way to protect yourself and to protect your bodily organs, basically. And people just, paste all these random ideas oh, but you're wet, so you definitely want this. No, I didn't. If I want it, I'll tell you. That's how you know. Language exists for a reason, guys.
Rape victims having orgasm midway through their rape is something that happens quite often, and it just makes them feel worse about themselves. And I think this even puts this whole perspective out there that they were asking for it. If they didn't want it, why would they orgasm and things like that? I'm like, no, your body can react to stimulations. Arousal does not equate to consent. It really doesn't. I think a lot of people kind of overlook consent from men. I know a lot of guy friends who were forcefully taken advantage of in a sexual setting, where they have been stimulated to a point that they have an erection, and then the girl just decides or takes that as a sign to just have sex with that person. And because men have already kind of conditioned themselves to thinking that, oh, I should enjoy sex, and when that happens, they're also kind of shocked by it. But they don't necessarily stop it because they're like, oh, I guess this is happening now, I'll just let it happen. But they still carry that weird feeling with them. They just don't realize that what they're feeling is violation. Men have a right to consent as well. So if your guys, if your boyfriends say they're not in the mood or they don't want it, even though they might have an erection, don't force yourself on them. Respect it, respect that boundary.
I think first of all, it's important to sort of declare that survivors don't owe it to anyone to report what they've gone through. They also don't owe it to anybody to explain the graphic details of their incident just so the listener can feel that it happened or that it's a valid experience. For me, the first few times I tried sharing it, my friends were like, oh no, I don't think it happened. I'm like, I just told you it happened. What do you mean you don't think it happened? So there's a lot of invalidation in the rape culture we have. There's a strong belief that if you survive sexual violence, it was kind of like your fault. Like you kind of asked for it, you are kind of to blame. This victim blaming culture that doesn't help survivors feel like they want to come forward. Also, if, let's say, the attacker is the father or a boyfriend or a friend they care about, many women are conflicted because even though they know deep down that something terrible has been done to them against their will, there's this strange other part that worries about their attacker. And it doesn't make sense to anyone who's never experienced sexual violence.
In my situation, it was a multitude of reasons. I was 17. I didn't know if anyone was going to believe me if I reported it. I don't talk to my parents about these things. I came from a school that was very conservative. I did not know how to go about reporting it even. And I had this fear that if I was going to go to a police station and report it, they're not going to believe me, or they're going to be like, why are you physically intimate with this person? Why do you go to his place? And ask me this whole bunch of questions, and I didn't want to kind of put myself in that position where I was really so traumatized and I have to re-explain myself with the risk of not being believed. And at the same time, because he was my partner at that point, I was somehow very concerned with the fact that if I reported it, something would permanently happen to him. So I just made that decision not to. So it was like a whole range of reasons why I didn't report at night. People assume that it will happen in a public place, in a back alley or something. I'm not saying that these incidents don't happen, they do, but it does not limit to those types of scenarios and those types of situations for sexual assault and sexual violence to happen.
A lot of people think that it has to be a violent act for it to be sexual violence, but no. You can be midway through consensual sex and say, look, I want to stop now. And if that person doesn't stop, but isn't being violent, but he just doesn't stop, that is also sexual violence. Because you just completely disregarded the other person's intent to stop, like they wanted to stop. Singapore might be safe, but there's a lot of things that happen behind closed doors that happens, and sometimes it's very hard to prove, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening.
So the next question was, what was the most difficult part about moving on? It felt like everything about it was difficult, to be honest. I wanted so bad to believe it was not happening again that I actually disassociated so much that I decided it did not happen. I was definitely alcoholic after. In my bid to pretend and it didn't happen and forget and deny the experience. And actually, like much later, I started looking into it and I went to see a counselor, and they actually told me it's a very classic PTSD symptom to pretend it didn't happen because it's just too unpleasant to think about. So for those 3-4 months, I didn't let anyone into my room without really thinking why. And I slept on the same blood-stained sheets for 3-4 months because I was just in such strong denial that it didn't happen. I was like suicidal multiple times, and I've tried various ways in which I wanted to take my life because the shame was overwhelming and I felt so disempowered and helpless. The hardest thing that people need to overcome when they survive sexual violence is the overwhelming sense of disempowerment that really disables your entire life in all aspects, from friends to school to work. Coming from that space and where I am now, I think it's like, it definitely has been like what seems like a long healing journey internally.
Because I already had like diminished sense of self-worth and identity because of the abuse, I felt constant pressure to have to justify my existence. I need to be doing good in my studies, I need to be a great girlfriend, I need to be a great daughter, I need to be a great sister, I need to do everything on the planet. I felt like I had to be that person who makes everyone else laugh. People have to enjoy being around me. There's a lot of people saying, look at Devika, she's so like jovial, she's clearly like gotten over it. But that's because this is just how I am, this is my personality. But there have been times when like sudden bursts of emotions just hit me and I just need to excuse myself to go to the washroom or something, and I'll cry for like 5 minutes now like get myself ready again, now go back out, and nobody would have known that I just had like a mental breakdown. But that's also like not okay. Like it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to let your friends. I've gotten better at it now. I can let people in. I can be like, yeah, so guys, I'm totally having a mental breakdown right now. BRB. So I can do that now. So that's progress. It takes time.
It's not true. Not everyone copes the same way. People have to stop thinking that, you know, like, oh, I'm supposed to be able to see that trauma from you. Which is why it's so important to kind of like check in with people and have a community of people that's able to sit down with you and go like, how are you, you know? And always ask, because what you see is not always what you get, and that's just how it is. During the immediate 2 years after it happened, I blocked out a lot of these things. But I think after getting, you know, after telling my friends, getting some sort of like a support system, that brought me to a place where I was like, I'm gonna talk to him about it. For me was more of closure, and on his part, recognizing what he's done to me. And a part of me believed that if he was able to process this, he wouldn't be able to do it to someone else.